I was sitting outside Mr. Reynolds' office, my hands clamped so tightly around my notebook that my knuckles had turned white. After 6 years in this company, countless late nights, missed birthdays, and coffee-fueled weekends, this was supposed to be my moment. I glanced at the frosted glass door. Inside, voices murmured, muted but tense. My heart was pounding in my ears. I rehearsed the moment in my head. He'd smile. He'd say, "Emily, congratulations. You earned the promotion." I'd shake his hand, pretending to stay professional, while my chest swelled with relief and pride. I even pictured calling Mom afterward. She'd cry. She'd say, "I always knew they'd see your worth." The door clicked open. Mr. Reynolds' assistant poked her head out. "Emily? He's ready for you." I stood, smoothing my skirt, ignoring the tremor in my hands. Every step toward that office felt like a march into a new life. Inside, the air was too cold. Mr. Reynolds sat behind his immaculate desk, arms crossed, a neutral expression on his face, and to his right sat Jason. Jason, with his lazy smile and perfect hair, who'd only been with the company 2 years. I froze. "Oh, I didn't know. Have a seat, Emily," Mr. Reynolds said, his voice clipped and formal. Saturday the chair felt harder than usual. He cleared his throat. "We've concluded the selection process for the new team lead position. We truly appreciate your dedication and the work you've put in over the years." My pulse quickened. I could already hear the but after careful consideration, we've decided to offer the role to Jason. For a second, I didn't process the words. They floated in the cold air of that office, like someone else's conversation. Jason was smiling politely, almost apologetically. My chest felt tight, as if the floor had vanished beneath me. "We value your contribution," Mr. Reynolds continued, "and we hope you'll continue to bring that energy to the team under Jason's leadership." Under Jason, the man who once asked me how to format an Excel table. The man who left early every Friday for networking drinks. I felt heat rising behind my eyes, but I forced a stiff smile. "Of course. Congratulations, Jason." He nodded, not meeting my gaze. Mr. Reynolds' voice softened, as if he could sense the crack in my composure. "We're counting on you to support the transition, Emily. I know this might be disappointing. Disappointing, like watching 6 years of my life being handed to someone else was just a small inconvenience." I gripped my notebook tighter. Because if I didn't, my hands would shake and they'd know exactly how broken I felt. When I walked out of that office, the open floor was buzzing as usual. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, and no one had any idea that my world had just cracked open. I passed Jason's desk. He was already leaning back in his chair, laughing with one of the sales guys, like nothing in the world had changed for him, but for me, everything had. I reached my cubicle, sat down slowly, and stared at my screen without seeing anything, because in that moment, I knew two things with absolute clarity. I'd just lost the war I'd been fighting for years. I couldn't stay in this place any longer. 6 months earlier, if someone had told me I'd be sitting in my cubicle with my heart in pieces, I would have laughed. Back then, I thought I was on the rise. Every morning, I got to the office before anyone else. The floor smelled like coffee and fresh printer paper. Keyboards were silent. And for an hour, it felt like the whole place belonged to me. I liked those moments. Because when people finally walked in, the laughter, the small talk, the whispers, the politics started. And I wasn't naive anymore. I knew our office ran on two things: deadlines and perception. I was the reliable one. The one who saved the day when a client panicked, the one who stayed late, the one who picked up the slack when others disappeared for networking. And I believed, naively, maybe, that work spoke louder than anything else. Then came the announcement. One Monday morning, Mr. Reynolds sent an email to the whole department. "We are opening the team lead position. Internal candidates encouraged to apply." I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. This was it. I'd been waiting for this for years. I'd been doing the job unofficially already, mentoring juniors, catching mistakes, even running client calls alone when no one else volunteered. This was supposed to be a formality. But then, I saw the names. Jason, Chloe, Derek, all expressing interest. Jason, the golden boy with a permanent smirk. Chloe, who treated the office like a runway and had lunch with Reynolds twice a week. Derek, who mostly scrolled on his phone but somehow got credit for other people's ideas. And then me. The invisible backbone. The one who made the place actually work. That same week, I started noticing things. Jason suddenly stayed late, though his monitor was suspiciously on LinkedIn half the time. Chloe started bringing Mr. Reynolds his favorite coffee. Like a ritual. Derek turned into a social butterfly, cracking jokes with the finance team and taking long walks with HR. Meanwhile, I just worked. I thought they can play their games. My results will speak for themselves. I was wrong. A few weeks later, Mr. Reynolds stopped by my desk. "Emily, great work on the Watson account," he said, barely glancing at me. "Jason mentioned he was impressed by how you handled the numbers." I blinked. Jason? I had done the whole report. He hadn't even opened the file. I forced a smile. "Thanks. Glad he noticed." Inside, though, something cold settled in my chest. Because in that moment, I understood what I was really up against. Not just competition, but a system where visibility mattered more than truth. From that day on, I started watching. Jason dropping compliments like candy. Chloe laughing too loudly at the boss's jokes. Derek accidentally including his name on my presentations. It was subtle, legal, invisible. And it worked. Because in an office war, the best liar always has the upper hand. Every evening, I stayed late, finishing reports and double-checking numbers, while their laughter echoed from the elevators. I told myself I was building an undeniable case for myself. But looking back, I was already playing their game on their terms. From the day I submitted my application for team lead, the office changed. Or maybe I just started seeing it clearly. Meetings weren't just meetings anymore. They were arenas. Jason leaned forward, always the first to speak, even when he had nothing real to say. Chloe played the role of supportive teammate, nodding at every word Mr. Reynolds said, slipping in little reminders about her extra projects. Derek was the worst. He started taking credit in subtle ways. Like the time I stayed up past midnight fixing a broken client report. The next morning in the meeting, Derek said, "Yeah, I worked closely with Emily on this. We made sure everything was perfect for the client." I sat there, frozen, as Mr. Reynolds nodded approvingly. He didn't even glance at me. That day, I realized something that made my stomach twist. Hard work only matters if someone notices. And they made sure they were always noticed. One Friday afternoon, I got an email from HR. Reminder: team lead candidates will be evaluated on leadership initiative. Any feedback or peer recognition will be considered. 2 hours later, I walked past the break room and heard Chloe's laugh. I stopped. I shouldn't have listened. But I did. "Oh, Emily," she said, her voice light and casual. "She's sweet, but she's not really a leader. More like a behind-the-scenes person." Laughter. Someone else chimed in, "Yeah, she's reliable, but she doesn't have that energy for a lead role." My face burned. I walked away before they could see me. The worst part wasn't the words. It was that they were planting a narrative. And in office politics, perception is reality. The next week, I decided to fight back. I volunteered to lead the Barton account presentation, a big one that could actually impress Reynolds. I rehearsed for days, built the deck, double-checked every number. On presentation day, I felt ready. But 5 minutes before we started, Jason strolled over, grinning. "Hey, Emily. I thought we agreed I'd open with the intro. You know, since Reynolds responds well to my style." We hadn't agreed. But everyone was watching. And if I refused, I'd look difficult. I let him open. And of course, he dragged the intro for 10 minutes, cracking little jokes, so when it was finally my turn, Reynolds' phone buzzed and he barely paid attention. After the meeting, Jason clapped me on the shoulder. "Great work, Emily. Couldn't have done it without you." Loud enough for the room to hear. Soft enough to make my blood boil. That evening, I stayed late again. The office was empty, lights humming, my reflection staring back at me from the dark window. I thought about the years I'd given this place. The holidays I skipped. The weekends I sacrificed. And for the first time, I felt something heavier than anger, doubt. Was I fighting a war I could never actually win? The email came on a Tuesday morning. Final presentations for the team lead candidates. Friday, 3 p.m. This was it. Months of silent battles, late nights, and pretending not to hear the whispers, it all came down to one last chance. I threw myself into prep mode. Slides, data, client feedback. I built a perfect presentation. I told myself, if I show them the results, they can't ignore me. I even practiced in front of my bathroom mirror. I pictured Reynolds nodding, finally saying the words I'd waited 6 years to hear. On Friday, the conference room was packed. Reynolds sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Jason, Chloe, and Derek went first. Jason cracked jokes. Chloe glowed with confidence. Derek did whatever Derek always did, just enough to not look incompetent. Then it was my turn. I stood at the front of the room, hands only slightly shaking, and took a deep breath. Thank you for your time. Over the last quarter, I've managed 3 critical accounts, including Watson and Barton, resulting in a 14% revenue increase and 0 client churn. I saw a flicker of interest on Reynolds' face. My heart lifted. Slide after slide, I laid out hard facts. No fluff. No fake charm. For the first time in months, I felt stronger than the games they played. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then Reynolds said, "Thank you, Emily. We'll be in touch." I walked back to my desk, pulse racing with cautious hope. Maybe, just maybe, the work would finally speak for itself. Monday morning. I was barely through the door when an email hit my inbox. Congratulations to Jason, our new team lead, effective immediately. I stared at the screen. Read it again. And again. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Around me, the office buzzed with fake excitement. Chloe clapped Jason on the back. Derek whistled. Someone said, "Drinks tonight to celebrate." Jason stopped by my desk, grinning like he'd won a marathon he never actually ran. "Hey, Emily. Seriously, couldn't have done it without you. You're the backbone of this place." I forced a smile that tasted like ash. That evening, I stayed late for the last time. The office was empty, lights humming above me. I stared at my screen, reading the same spreadsheet over and over until my vision blurred. And then, without fully deciding, I opened a new email draft. Subject, resignation. I typed the words slowly, feeling 6 years of my life compress into a single decision. Dear Mr. Reynolds, I want to thank you for the opportunities I've had here. But it's time for me to move on to a new chapter in my career. When I hit send, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. I packed my things in a small box, a mug, a plant, a photo from last year's holiday party where I still believed this place was my future. I walked out without looking back. The morning after I sent my resignation, I woke up without an alarm for the first time in years. No buzzing phone. No mental checklist waiting to crush me. Just silence. And in that silence, I realized how heavy the office had been, how it had clung to me like a wet coat I didn't even notice I was wearing. I made coffee slowly, watching the steam rise in the quiet of my kitchen. No rush. No fear of Jason accidentally taking credit for something. No fake smiles. I felt empty, but it was the good kind of empty. The kind that makes space for something new. By noon, I opened my laptop and started looking for jobs. I promised myself one thing. This time, I'm choosing a place that sees me. Not just my output. Me. It didn't happen overnight. I went through interviews that felt like the same old corporate routine, where people smiled politely, but didn't really listen. And then, I found it. A small, fast-growing firm downtown. They wanted a team lead, but one who could build processes from scratch, mentor staff, and grow with the company. The CEO looked at my resume and said, "You've done the work of a leader for years. You just weren't in the right place to be seen." Something in my chest loosened. I almost laughed from relief. I started the next month. And from day one, I felt the difference. People asked for my opinion and actually listened. My ideas didn't vanish into someone else's PowerPoint. When I stayed late, which was rare, it was because I wanted to. Not because fear pushed me. One evening, I walked out of the new office as the sun was setting, the city glowing gold. I stopped on the sidewalk, took a deep breath, and realized I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't angry at Jason or Chloe or Derek. They could keep their little games. I'd won something bigger: my freedom, my self-respect, and a future I actually wanted. Sometimes, I think about the day I walked out of that old office with a box in my hands. It felt like defeat. But now I know it was the first real win of my career. I'll leave you with this. Have you ever stayed in a place that didn't deserve you, just because you were afraid to leave? Because the day you finally walk away is the day your life actually begins.